Welcome to the show, Congressman Joe Sestak.
Good to be back, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Now, what are you hearing about these new numbers? What's happening on the campaign trail? And then we can get into some of what's happening in the House of Representatives with health care and other issues.
Well, the numbers, which show the gap tremendously closing, is exactly what I've seen everywhere in Pennsylvania. They've looked at Arlen and said, you know, Arlen Specter, it's been 30 years. We should thank you for your service. But we aren't going to forget the 2,000 votes you gave to President Bush that placed us in the savage recession with tax cuts, with 53% of those tax cuts going to the millionaires, the top 1%, where he voted for the highest education cut in the history of America. And they say, you know, thank you. But the future takes a different approach with new ideas and new energy. So I basically have seen in the polls exactly what I'm hearing out there. We want to thank him. He's done some decent things. It's just time for a change.
Are you still campaigning with the potential Republican nominee? In terms of, when I say campaigning, I mean, are you still engaged in forums with him?
We haven't done another forum, and but I look forward to doing it right after I win the primary. I think Pat Toomey and I are going to be going back and forth. You know, the last couple polls are showing Arlen Specter losing to Pat Toomey, with me beating him. And so I think we should have welcomed Arlen Specter after he abandoned the Republican Party that he'd been there for 45 years into the Democratic Party. We've got a Big Tent, but that doesn't mean the Democratic Party should fall on our sword for him. Look, the future is really about somebody who's in it for Pennsylvanians. That I served 31 years in the U.S. military. I believe in principle. I believe in standing tall for what you believe in and letting people know, and then listening to them, but not changing your vote, your party, as he has done on issues from the public option over to the Defense of Marriage Act just 3 days ago, because he wants to keep his job. Too many Pennsylvanians lost their jobs to worry about his. I intend to run, as I've been doing in the military in 2.5 years of representative, on principle. Politics will follow principle. That's what I believe.
You've experienced a particularly busy week in the House of Representatives with a number of issues. Tell us a little bit about what's been going on.
Absolutely. Most importantly has been the House coming forward with one bill that we should vote on next week to reform health care in Pennsylvania and America. It does two major things. First, it removes the insurance companies from rationing health care to us, where they deny people with pre-existing conditions from coverage, to where the majority of individualized private health care plans deny maternity services for women. Second, it says in Pennsylvania we have two companies that own 40% of all private health care plans, and they dictate as a monopoly the price to us. And our prices and premiums in Pennsylvania have gone up 100%, doubled in 8 years. So it puts out there a choice, a public option, a consumer option that you can choose. You don't have to be in it. It's not funded by the government, but only by your co-pays and premiums. But it doesn't pay $23 million salaries to CEOs or $70 million severance pay or high advertising costs or undue profits. And all of a sudden, these two monopolies have to begin to compete with lower prices, but mandated to provide the same benefits that Congress members have now. And all of a sudden, the growth of health care, which has doubled the last 8 years, slows down. What's good for Americans, that is health care for all, now is also an economic requirement to do to slow the cost of health care.
By the time the health care legislation works its way through the Senate, is there going to be any resemblance to what you worked on this week with regard to the House bill? Great question.
I think 50% of what I just brought up, that health insurance companies won't deny benefits any longer, is going to remain. The public option will probably come out, unfortunately, because of the Senate. We don't have enough warriors there to fight for it, is going to be probably a hybrid of what I just described. It might become, for example, a trigger to where several years from now, when the health care costs do not stop rising, it will trigger in the public option. But the reason I'm not for that And because we don't have enough senators right now to make it happen. Joe Lieberman fell out, for example. But what now appears, why I'm not for it, is we lose the equivalent every week of Reading, of Allentown the next week, of losing their entire health care plan in a week. 14,000 Americans do it, and 700 Pennsylvanians every day. And if we wait for several more years, more Americans won't have health care, particularly in this damning type of economy we have.
Do you expect Senator Specter to be more of a Republican than a Democrat in that debate about health care?
It's very interesting. When he switched parties, he first voted against the budget of President Obama that had the health care reform layout in it. Then he said on TV twice, I am opposed to the public option. And when asked about it, he said, I repeat, I said I'm opposed to it. But he switched a few months ago after I announced my intention to get in the race. No, he'll probably vote, and I hope he does, for the public option because, Arlen Specter's kind of hard to control. The White House, as you know, gives him the carrots. I have to provide the stick, and he has to follow my leadership. He is switching his vote to whatever is necessary to keep his job. That's not the kind of principled leadership we need. No, he won't be a leader over there because, frankly, the Republicans are uneasy with him, and Democrats are worried he's a flight risk after an election that he might win. But he's there. Let's hope he does support the public option. It's just that we no longer have a leader that really can be a titan to shape the future.
We talk a lot here, Congressman, about the ongoing wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. I try my best to continue to raise awareness to the issues that need to be discussed. I know Afghanistan is a complicated issue, but because of your extensive experience in the Navy, 31-year career, leaving the Navy as a 3-star admiral, can you give us a little bit of what you're sensing and what your impressions are with regard to Afghanistan?
Yes, I was on the ground, as you probably know, early in that war because I headed the Navy's anti-terrorism unit, and I had a short mission I needed to do there before I took command of the Carrier Battle Group for the retaliatory strikes in that conflict. I've sat and gone through the McChrystal report, the classified version, and here's what I support and here's what I believe should be done, and I want everyone to know where I stand on issues. If the president, and I hope he does, supports a measured increase in troops, I will support it with the goal of being the eradication of the safe haven of Al-Qaeda that's in Pakistan. They sit there and they can quietly plan undisturbed against us. In conjunction with the Pakistanis and our covert and other efforts in closing the door so the Taliban who helped the Al-Qaeda in Pakistan can't move across the border, we need to help eradicate that. Then the president has to provide simultaneously benchmarks because we can't do an open-ended commitment. It would cost too much to go forever. That measures success or failures in this effort. And if the benchmark success aren't being met, it triggers an exit strategy. But if they are being met, what we have to do for Afghanistan, which has spiraled so far southward that we cannot do any nation building, is merely to leave the conditions behind that are inhospitable for years from now for Al-Qaeda to come back. In short, the Kabul government is so corrupt, the central government of Afghanistan, we shouldn't even try to resurrect it. We need to, as I saw when I was on the ground early in that conflict, buy off the local tribal chiefs and warlords, buying into economic development of some sort. And there's only 20,000 Taliban that are in Afghanistan, and 70% are there literally for a wage, not ideology. That we are able to neutralize the 6,000 bad ones, real radical ones, and to leave behind some semblance of of conditions that are inhospitable to Al-Qaeda coming back. That's the best we can do, but we cannot, at least for now, lose one last opportunity to eradicate that Al-Qaeda cell that planned 9/11 against us, and that's where I sit.
So what's your next stop on the campaign trail, Congressman? Where do you go from here?
Well, I have got several items to do over the weekend. I'm going to head over to I'm going to be up in Philadelphia. I'm going to head out to Bucks County. I just came back from York County. Then we've got votes next week, and then I'm going to spend a week. We're gone for voting, and I'm going to be throughout the Pennsylvania, probably heading up a bit more to your area and expanding. Once votes are done in the month of December and January, then I'm everywhere once more. Look, here's what I believe more than anything. I went to those 67 counties, and Steve, it convinced me that two major things. That is, the GOP leadership ran the United States ship America aground. And we in the Navy, we leave captains for cause when they run a ship aground. We should never reward someone in the GOP leadership who did that with 2,000 votes for President Bush, and that's Arlen Specter. Thank him. But now the second point. There are so many issues like small business tax cuts to incentivize investments for them, to where we increase Pell Grants and Stafford loans for children, our children to go to college and afford it, but where we do it under a balanced budget. And third, this health care reform is necessary because 18% tax is placed on small businesses today because they can't spread the risk of their few employees if they have someone with a pre-existing condition, so that we want to decrease it. So I will fight for those issues in a principled way every day.
Okay, keep us posted. Let us know. You're always welcome here because we need to continue to know who you are and what you stand for. We'll talk with you again, Congressman Joe Sestak.
Steve, thanks for having me aboard.
Anytime.